Hello, everybody. How are we tonight? I will wait for people to come in. I'm going to start taking my makeup off and work. How's everybody doing tonight? You guys having a good Friday night? Hey, Freddie, how are you? Oh, and don't let me forget, Brownie's outside. You're in charge. Are you having a good Friday evening? Do you like that I put you in charge of things? Okay. I will wait for people to come in before I start saying what the story is and everything. But it's a good one. Oh my goodness. So, did you have a good day? Anything exciting that you did today? Are you doing anything exciting tomorrow? I messed up my contact when I was taking my makeup off. Don't you hate that if you wear contact? Oh, so annoying. Not, I just work, so I don't know if that's exciting. I just hope all my appointments show up because I have 2 long appointments. Like, one's a balayage that's going to take 3 hours, and then the other one's going to take 4 hours, and it's a huge appointment. So if they don't show up, pretty much my day's shot. So hopefully everybody shows up, or I'm going to have nothing to do all day. So hopefully no shows tomorrow, or that's going to kind of stink. That's the only bad thing about my job sometimes is when people don't show up for their appointments. Yeah. Some colors can take 4 hours. Like if you have like a double process, like when you have to bleach somebody's head, let that process, shampoo them, and put another color on. Yeah, it could take like 4 hours to do sometimes. Hello, whoever just came in. How are you tonight? Are you having a good evening? Are you ready to hear a good story tonight? Do the 5 no way 4 hours. No, it is some colors can take. Hey Matthew, we just got here. It is not bedtime yet. No bed. How is your day, Matthew? Go to sleep. No, go to sleep. I'm gonna grab Brownie before I get started on the story. I hate hearing that you had a crappy day. No crappy day. That makes me sad you had a crappy day. Ooh, nice. I'm on a 60-inch. That's fun. Yes, unacceptable. We do not accept you having a crappy day. And the story is not uplifting, so I don't think that I can say that the story will be uplifting and make you like happy or anything. It's actually really sad. So I can't say the story is going to be like uplifting in any sort of way. So I am doing the Gertrude Banswick and the murder of Sylvia Likens. That is the story we are doing tonight. So, adults only. I'm going to give that warning. And there's going to be adult context. And if you have any triggers or anything to like child abuse, this is probably not alive for you to listen to. I'm just going to put that out there. And there is a lot of information on this one. A lot. Does anybody know this story? Hello, who has ever come in? How are you doing tonight? Has anybody watched the movie? Because I know there's a movie about it. And there's, well, like I said, there is like a ton of information. Freddie, Matthew, have you read the story or anything? And then I think the movie on Prime is called like An American Crime. Well, she is horrible. Horrible. Wait until you hear it. Oh, it's a horrible story. All right, well, I guess I'll just get started. Because it is a long story. So we'll just get started. You're unsure too. Well, you guys are not going to be unsure very long. And I don't know if I'm saying her last name right. Banswick. I think that's how you pronounce it, Banswick. Okay. She was born, well, September 19th, 1928. And was born in Indianapolis, Indiana. Oh, you want me to spell it? Okay. Banszeewi. Banswick. I think that's how you say it. Freddie? Am I right or am I totally off? I'm horrible at pronouncing. Anyway. Hey, Tammy, how are you? I am doing good. We're just getting started. We're going on the tonight's story. It is Gertrude Van's Whiskey, and the murder of Sylvia Likens. So if you have heard of it, let me know, Tammy. Because I know there's a movie based on it. I was just checking something. Okay. All right. So she was born in Indianapolis, Indiana, to Molly Myrtle and Hugh Marcus Van Flossen Sr., both of whom were originally from Illinois and were American and Dutch. I'm glad you're doing well. They were both Dutch descendants. Van's Whiskies was third of 6 children and her family, and they were like working class. And there's also not much said of how she was brought up. You know, a lot of like serial killers and stuff, they'll like had a bad childhood and everything. And after you hear this story, you'll wonder what happened to her to make her do such horrible things. She was born in 1928. But yeah, so they don't know like a lot of her childhood, except for that she watched her father die of a sudden heart attack. And 6 years later, she dropped out of high school to marry John Stephen Van's Whiskey. And he was 18 and she was 16 years old. And he was originally from Youngsville, Pennsylvania, and he was Polish. Hey, hobbyist, how are you? You only thumbs up for $1? All right. I'm going to owe you a lot of money then, I guess. Because you always say that for $1. Anyway, so he was originally from Youngsville, Pennsylvania, and they had 4 children. And John had a violent temper and occasionally beat his wife, Gertrude. And then they stayed together for 10 years before their first divorce. And so then her following the divorce of Van Whiskey, she married a man named Edward Guthrie. This marriage lasted 3 months. And then the couple divorced, and she remarried her first husband. Yeah, her first divorce. And then had 2 more children with her first husband. And then they divorced in 1963 for the second time. Yep, I don't know why. And weeks after the third divorce, Van's Whiskey began a relationship with a 22-year-old Dennis Lee Wright. Hey, Metal Music. And he would physically abuse her, and she would have 1 child with him, Dennis Wright Lee Jr. And then he then Senior abandoned her after their son was born, and she sued for child support, but Wright did not pay hardly at all. And then by 1965, Van Winsky lived alone with her 7 children: Paula, 17, Stephanie, 15, John, 12, Marie, 11, Shirley, 10, James, 8, and Dennis Lee Wright Jr., 1. She was 36 years old, 5'6", and they said she weighed about 100 pounds, but her appearance was described as haggard. And she was super underweight, and she was asthmatic, but she was a chain smoker. And so figure that one out. You have 8 virtues. Oh, that's good. So she was a chain smoker, and she had depression because of her failed marriages. But her first husband did pay child support. And she performed odd jobs for neighbors and acquaintances, such as sewing, cleaning, to make money. So that is her background. And then, Sylvia Marie Likens was born January 3rd, 1949. And she was the third of 5 children. And her family was carnival workers. They were lower class. Yeah, she was a chain smoker that was asthmatic. Yep, Gertrude smoked a lot. Anyway, so the Likens were carnival workers. Lester Cecil Likens was the father, and his wife Elizabeth, known as Betty Francis, Sylvia was born between 2 sets of fraternal twins, Daniel and Diana, 2 years older than her, and then Benny and Jenny, 1 year younger. And Jenny Likens, she had got polio, and so it caused her to have one of her legs to be weaker than the other, and so she would have a limp. And she had to wear a steel brace on one of her legs. Not the same Likens as in this story, but, good movie. And not spelled the same. But I love that you thought of that movie. Because you know me and movies. Okay, so Lester and Elizabeth's marriage was unstable. They stole everything: candy, beer, soda, at the carnival, and they were experiencing a lot of financial difficulty. Hey, Heather. Oh no, I'm so sorry that you've been sick. I hope your family starts feeling better soon. I'm so sorry that you guys are all sick. Sending prayers for you guys. Oh, you guys had the Delta? But that's horrible. I'm so sorry. Okay. So they had financial difficulties, and the Likens sons regularly traveled with their parents for the carnival. And but they didn't think that Sylvia and Jenny should be with them for the carnival. Like, they didn't think that was suitable for the girls to go along with them. The oldest daughter was already married, and she didn't travel with them. So in her teenage years, Sylvia Likens occasionally earned spending money by babysitting, running errands, performing ironing chores with friends and neighbors, and giving her mother part of her earnings. She also was described as very friendly and confident, lively girl with very long, wavy, light brown hair extended below her shoulders. And her nickname by her friends was Cookie. Okay. Well, I'm so glad that you guys are kind of like just starting to feel better. I know that it takes a long time to start feeling better from that. She also had like one of her front teeth missing because one time when she was little, she was roughhousing with her brothers, and so she chipped her front teeth, and so she was kind of embarrassed about that, so she didn't smile a whole lot. She really liked music. Her favorite band was the Beatles. And she was very protective of her sister, Jenny, and they would go skating a lot. And, she was just a typical teenager. Okay, so in July of 1965, I'm sorry, I got the date wrong. Sorry. By June 1965, Sylvia and Jenny Likens, they resided with their parents in Indianapolis. On July 3rd, their mother was arrested and was sent to jail. And so the father decided that he needed to go back to the carnival, but he didn't want to take the girls. And so he needed to find a place for them to go because he didn't want to take the girls on the carnival. Hey, Jamie, how are you? Are you having a good night? So Sylvia was friends with one of Gertrude's daughters. And so Gertrude offered to watch the girls for $20 a week. They could stay at her house and she would take care of them. And so the Likens agreed to that arrangement, and that she would take care of them like her own, like she would her own children. And so they did that. And so shortly after July 4th, the sisters moved in with Gertrude and her 7 children. When they started, then right when they moved in, Gertrude started disciplining them, and they were, I'm trying to read, make sure. So they attended school. They went to Sunday school. And the pastor commended Sylvia all the time with her virtue. Said that she was a very good girl and everything. And so, although the Likens agreed to pay Gertrude $20 to exchange for Gertrude watching the girls, he did not pay it very often. So the payments failed and to arrive on, and so Gertrude began venting her frustrations and on the girls, and she would say, and she would use paddles a quarter-inch thick, and she would say things like, well, I took care of you two bitches for a week for nothing. And both girls were beaten approximately 15 times on the back with the paddle. And then after Paula accused the sisters of eating too much food at church that they attended, the girls were beaten. By mid-August 1965, Gertrude began focusing most of the abuse on Sylvia because of jealousy and her physical appearance, and just because she thought she had more potential in life. This woman is so horrible. Like, that was just like the beginning. Like, the story gets so much worse. So what do you guys think so far? I want your guys' thoughts. And I know people kind of come in. What? See you next Tuesday. What? She would pay her $20 to beat you. Well, oh, it gets so much worse. I don't think you'd want her to beat you with a paddle. She's so horrible to these girls. Oh my God. The paddle is just like the beginning of it. Okay. So on all these, all these stories come from the trial of all this comes from the trial that happened. So, okay, so on one of the occasions, late August, Sylvia was subjected to humiliation. She claimed to have a boyfriend before she moved in with them, and in California in the springtime in 1965. And, so Gertrude asked if she ever done anything. And Sylvia, not knowing what she meant because she was an innocent teenager, she had no idea what she was referring to. And so she said they went skating, they went to the beach, to the park. She mentioned one time they laid under a blanket together, not thinking that meant that Gertrude was referring to like sex or anything. Gertrude was like, why would you do that, Sylvia? And Sylvia's like, I don't know. And she's like, and then days later, Gertrude told Sylvia, she's like, Sylvia, you're looking big. It looks like you're having a baby. And Sylvia thought she was joking. And she's like, oh, yeah, I need to diet. Ha, ha, ha. And so Gertrude informed her that the other girls in the house would, you know, when they're with a boy, that she was, you know, was going to have a baby for sure. So she started kicking Sylvia in the stomach. And then the genitals. And then Paula was overweight and 3 months pregnant, and was jealous of Sylvia's appearance, and then also participated in kicking her. Hey, Double Trouble. How are you tonight? So they knocked her off the chair and told her on the kitchen floor and shouting, "You ain't fit to sit in this chair." And so Paula was just as horrible to her. On another occasion, the family ate supper, and Gertrude and Paula and the neighborhood boy, Randy, they force-fed Sylvia hot dogs and overloaded him with condiments, including mustard, ketchup, spices, and until Sylvia vomited. And then when she vomited, they made her eat the vomit. That is so disgusting. This is so gross. She's just horrible. This woman is like a bitch. Like, oh. It's like, I don't know. It's like so horrible. What do you guys think so far when I pick out palettes? Any thoughts? Anybody? She got to each one. I don't know. I don't know if you could consider that a good thing or a bad thing. The movies. No, I don't think that. I don't think it's like that movie. It's been a while since I've seen the movie 7, though. I'd have to re-see it. Okay, so then. So one time that Sylvia retaliated against them, she spreaded a rumor against Stephanie and Paula that they were prostitutes, because they spread a rumor about her being a prostitute. I don't blame her for spreading a rumor about them. Like, wouldn't you, if they like were beating you and like doing horrible things to you, wouldn't you spread a rumor about them? I mean, I kind of feel like they kind of deserve it. They are horrible people. And so she spread this rumor, and they were at school, Stephanie was jokingly propositioned by a boy and told her that Sylvia had started this rumor that she was a prostitute. Upon returning home, Stephanie questioned Sylvia about the rumor, and she admitted to starting it, and Stephanie punched her in response. But Sylvia apologized in tears. I'm stroking you through the screen. No, it's not working yet. I think you have to be like on the screen for it to work. I did not. Yeah. Yeah, 2 wrongs don't make it right, but I don't know. These people were pretty horrible to her. Anyway, so she admitted to it and Stephanie punched her. In response, Sylvia apologized. Stephanie's boyfriend, Coy, 15, heard about it, and he attacked Sylvia, slapped her, banged her head against the wall, flipping her backwards onto the floor. When Gertrude found out, she beat Sylvia with a paddle. I mean, but keep in mind, these two girls also just spread the same rumor about Sylvia, and nothing happened to them for spreading the same rumor. Only Sylvia got beaten. Anyway, so on another occasion, Paula beat Sylvia on the face with such force that she broke her own wrist, punching Sylvia in the face. And then Paula used the cast on her hand to punch Sylvia. And then Gertrude would also later on have Jenny, her Sylvia's sister, to also hit Sylvia. And if she didn't, then they would beat Jenny for not hitting her sister. You didn't mind? You didn't mind the rumor? That's good. So Coy Hubbard, the boyfriend, and several of his classmates frequently visited the home, and they all physically and verbally tormented Sylvia and joined in with Gertrude and Paula, and often collaborated with their Van's Whiskey children and Gertrude herself. With active encouragement of Gertrude, these neighborhood children routinely beat Sylvia, sometimes using her as practice dummy to karate, cutting her body, burning her with cigarettes over 100 times. Hi, Melanie. How are you? You just missed the backstory, and I'm just getting into the abuse of Sylvia. But I know you kind of already know the story. How are you doing tonight? Okay, you're cooking dinner? Okay, so they would burn her over 100 times, severely injuring her genitals. And to entertain Gertrude and her teenage accomplice, they would force Sylvia at one point to strip naked in the living room and masturbate with a glass Coke bottle. And Gertrude would state in the presence the act of humiliation was for Sylvia to prove to Jenny what kind of girl that she was. Gertrude eventually forbid Sylvia from attending school after she confessed to having stolen gym suit that Gertrude refused to buy for her. Hold on. Let me let the dog out real quick again. Hold on. Talk among yourselves. Sorry about that. I know. It is a fucked up story. Oh, she is so horrible. Like, oh, she's the biggest bitch. Like, I don't know. She's just a horrible, nasty person. I don't even know if, like, there's another word that can explain it. She's a bitch. She's just horrible. So anyway, Sylvia stole the clothes because Gertrude refused to buy them for her. And for this act, Gertrude whipped Sylvia with 3-inch wide whip and police belt. It was a police belt, sorry. And Gertrude then switched the conversation to the evils of premarital sex before repeatedly kicking Sylvia in the genitals. She is a POS. She's a piece of shit. She's like disgusting. I just can't understand why she would, and why this went on as long as it did. Like, why not somebody save this poor girl? It's so horrible. It's just a horrible story. Anyway, so she kicked her in the genitals, and then as Stephanie finally stepped in and rallied in Sylvia's defense, shouting she didn't do anything. And Gertrude then burned Sylvia's fingertips with matches before further whipping her. A few days later, Gertrude repeatedly whipped Jenny with a police belt after she reported stealing tennis shoes from the school for her strong foot. Like, these poor kids. So the Likens sisters were so fearful of Gertrude that they wouldn't tell, like, family members or adults at their school because of the abuse and neglect that they were enduring, because they were afraid that it would make things worse where they were at. So they lived in so much fear of Gertrude that they wouldn't tell anybody. But Jenny, she really struggled with that. Like, she really wanted to tell somebody and help her sister. And she didn't. Jenny also was subjected to bullying by the girls at the neighborhood school because of her foot. But she still never told anybody about what was happening. It is horrible. Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse. In July and August, both Lester and Elizabeth Likens would occasionally return to Indianapolis to visit their daughters, but whenever they were scheduled or afforded them to visit their daughters, it was late August. On this occasion, neither girl exhibited any physical like signs of abuse or signs of distress about the mistreatments. And this was likely because both girls were, Gertrude was there. She was like making sure that they didn't say anything. So she like helicoptered, made sure that she didn't leave them alone so they could tell their parents what was going on. And then right after they left, Lester and Elizabeth left the home, Gertrude turned to Sylvia and stated, "What are you going to do now, Sylvia? Now they're gone." You did send me a lot, and I read every one of them. Every one of them. There was so much information. And it kind of made me cry a little bit because the story is just so horrible. Several weeks prior to the occasion, Sylvia and Jenny would encounter their older sister, Diana, in the park, right, in company of 11-year-old Marie Vanswick-Whiskey. And Sylvia had been given a sandwich to eat while she mentioned to her sister that she was really hungry. Because remember, they starve her. Like, they don't let her eat. And if they do let her eat, it's like rotten food, or they like, you know, stuff her full of hot dogs until the point of vomiting. So she is like very malnourished. She's like starving. And so her sister gave her a sandwich because she was hungry, and Sylvia was engaged. So then Gertrude found out because her daughter told her. And so then when Sylvia was accused of gluttony, and what they decided to do, Paula and Gertrude put her in a scalding bath of hot water to cleanse her of her sin. And then Gertrude grabbed Sylvia's hair and repeatedly, Gertrude grabbed Sylvia's hair and repeatedly banged her head against the bath, trying to revive her because she fainted. And shortly after that incident, there was a father in the neighborhood that said that there was a girl that was, that was covered in bruises. And so after that, the school nurse visited the home, but Gertrude told the nurse that Gertrude claimed that Sylvia was a bad influence on her children, and that she just was running with that she was a slut, and she was just running around with guys and they were beating her like wild sex parties and stuff. And she's just a really bad influence, and she was out of control. And yeah. Oh, and she also had, and she said that she was also was like bad. She was like refusing to like personal hygiene. Like, she basically lied to this nurse. And so the nurse was like, "Oh, that's good enough for me. Sounds good. Sorry to bother you." I know. I know. They like cleansing this. It makes me so mad in the story that they're using that as an excuse to abuse this girl. Like, really? I don't think that is an excuse to beat somebody. It's just annoying. And don't retract it. I agree. Stupid ass people. Anyway, so the sister comes to see her sisters. Gertrude sends her away. And she's like, she doesn't want to let her in, and she sends her away. I wonder why she doesn't want to let her in. I mean, strange, huh? So wouldn't let her in. She stated that she needed permission from her parents to allow either of the girls to see her, and she ordered Diana to get off her property. And then Diana encountered Jenny by chance, and Jenny tells her, "I can't tell you or I'll get in trouble," is what she told Jenny. And it's so sad. So it gets worse due to the increase of frequencies, the torture and mistreatment to Sylvia gets worse. Sylvia gradually becomes more isolated. She's already, not allowed to go to school. She was denied any access to the bathroom. She's being forced to wet herself as a form of punishment. For her incontinence, on October 6th, Gertrude threw Likens into the basement and tied her up. Likens was often kept naked and rarely fed, and frequently deprived of water. Occasionally, she was tied to the railing of the basement stairs with her feet barely touching the ground. Okay, in weeks prior to locking Sylvia in the basement, Gertrude increasingly abused and tormented. She occasionally falsely claimed to the children in her household that she herself or one of them had been a recipient to direct insults from Sylvia, and hoped that would, make the children mad at Sylvia and, get them fired up so they would go beat her. She's a bitch. She's just a piece of shit. And they would display Sylvia's body and humiliate and beat and scold and burn her and ultimately mutilate her body. Throughout Sylvia's captivity in the basement, Gertrude frequently, with the assistance of her children and neighborhood children, restrained and gagged Sylvia before placing her in the bathtub and filled it with scalding water, and then rubbed salt all over her wounds. Any thoughts so far? Besides that she's just a piece of shit. I mean, that's like the only thoughts I have, is that she's just a piece of shit. Okay. On one occasion, Gertrude's 12-year-old son, John Jr., took the baby's diaper and rubbed the feces all over Sylvia. And before giving her a cup of water, that was the only water that she would get, 1 cup of water a day. I know. That poor girl. I mean, I just feel like they would treat a dog better than they treated her. It's like, I don't know why they thought that they could treat her so horrible. It just breaks my heart for her. This is like so horrible. I love scalding hot baths. I like hot baths, but no, I don't know about that hot. On October 22nd, John Jr., again, he tormented Sylvia by offering her to allow her to eat a bowl of soup with her fingers and then quickly taking it away the bowl when Sylvia, by this stage, suffering was extremely malnourished, and she attempted to eat the free food. And Gertrude eventually allowed Sylvia to sleep upstairs, but on the condition that she learned not to wet herself. But remind you that she's been like beaten so bad in her female parts that she couldn't control her bladder hardly at all. She's been tortured and beaten so badly there that she couldn't she would wet herself. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Freddie. You're the best. Come on, Brownie. That's why Freddie's in charge. Thank you. Okay. I'm surprised because I'm getting so like distracted with the story and reading that I'm surprised that it's like coming together. Okay. Okay, so then when she found out that she peed the bed, her punishment was, this is horrible. She forced Sylvia to shove an empty Coke bottle up her vagina. And then put her back in the basement. And that is horrible. She's a piece of shit. She's a piece of shit. And then shortly after, Gertrude shouted to Sylvia to return to the kitchen and ordered her to strip naked and to proclaim, "You have branded my daughters, now I'm going to brand you." And she carved in the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it," onto Likens' stomach. Thank you, Freddie. When Gertrude was unable to finish the branding, she had one of the neighbor boys do that. Richard Dean Hobbs, he's 14 years old. He's also a piece of shit for doing that. I mean, I love the stories you give me, Melanie. This one's good. You keep the stories coming. Shortly thereafter, so he finished carving and into her flesh, and then they took Jenny to the grocery store, and Hobbs would later, you know, finish their brand, and Hobbs then Gertrude later taunted Sylvia by claiming that she would never be able to marry because of the words carved into her stomach. And Sylvia, what are you going to do now? You can't get married now. What are you going to do now? Weeping, Sylvia replied, I guess there's nothing I can do. Later that day, Sylvia Likens was forced to display the branding to the neighborhood children, and Gertrude claimed that she had received that at a sex party. She's so horrible. Okay, so that night, Sylvia was laying with Jenny, and she told Jenny, I know you don't want me to die, but I'm going to die. I can tell it. And the following day, Gertrude woke Sylvia and forced her to write a letter. She dictated what exactly she wanted Sylvia to write, and she wanted it to mislead her parents to make it sound like that Sylvia ran away, and that she ran away with a group of anonymous local boys, and that were extremely abusive and mutilated her body, and that she was having sexual relations with them, and they tortured her, and, to cut her cover story. So when everybody finds out what's going on, that they don't blame Gertrude for this. And then they were going to have them then after she finished the letter, Sylvia was going to be tied up to the star railing and offered crackers to eat, although she refused them, saying, give it to the dog, I don't want it. Gertrude forced the crackers into her mouth, and then John beat her on her stomach. And then October 25th, Sylvia attempted to escape because she overheard a conversation Gertrude and John were having about the family's plan to abandon Sylvia and for her to die. So Sylvia was like, she was going to escape. And so she attempted to flee the front door. However, due to her extreme injuries and the fact that they starved her and she had no energy, Gertrude caught up with her before she could escape. And Sylvia was given toast to eat, but was unable to consume the food because she was so dehydrated and malnourished. Well, she was starving because I can't talk. And then Gertrude repeatedly struck her in the face with a curtain rod. And sections of the instrument were bent into right angles from hitting her face. And Coy Hubbard then took the curtain rod from Gertrude and struck Sylvia one further time, rendering her unconscious. And then Gertrude dragged Sylvia into the basement. I know, I'd be a psycho. I would be a psycho if somebody hurt my kids like this. For one, I don't think I would let somebody watch my kid. Anyway, so that evening, Sylvia desperately attempted to alert the neighbors by screaming for help, hitting the walls of the basement. One of the neighbors of the band's whiskeys would later inform the police that she heard desperate commotions, and she identified the source of coming from the basement. And it was about 3 a.m. that she heard it. But she decided not to inform the police of that disturbance. Really? A stupid neighbor. Are you serious? You wouldn't Oh, that's horrible. By that morning, October 26th, Sylvia could not speak anything recognizable or correctly, and she had no motor movement. Like, she couldn't move. Gertrude moved Sylvia into the kitchen, having propped her up against the wall. Sorry. Let me do this, and then so I don't poke my eye out, because that would be bad. Okay. It's hard to read and smoke out your bottom lid. Okay. So they were trying to prop her up against the wall to attempt to feed her a donut and a glass of milk. Although she threw Sylvia to the floor in frustration, when Sylvia was unable to correctly move the glass to her lips, she returned her to the basement. And then shortly after, Sylvia became delirious, and she repeatedly moaning and mumbling. And then when Paula asked her to recite the English alphabet, Sylvia couldn't. But, nobody decided to call an ambulance or anything. Oh, it is looking good? So then Sylvia was unable to recite anything beyond the first 4 letters to raise herself off the ground. And then Paula started verbally threatening her to either stand up or she would inflict a long jump upon her. And Gertrude then ordered Sylvia, who was decaffeinated, to clean herself. So, yeah, they decided that they were trying to order her to obviously she has some head trauma or something. I don't know. But what are they thinking? They're so stupid. After that afternoon, several of Sylvia's other tormentors gathered in the basement. Sylvia jerkingly moved her arms in an apparent attempt to point at the faces of the tormentors she could recognize, making statements such as, "You're Ricky, you're Gertie," before Gertie, "Shut up, you know who I am." Minutes later, Sylvia unsuccessfully attempted to bite into a rotten pear she'd been giving to eat. And stating she could feel the like her teeth loosening. Upon hearing this, Jenny replied, "Don't you remember, Sylvia, your front tooth was knocked out when you were 7. So what do you guys think so far? Do you think they're like, I mean, anybody has thoughts so far? I keep asking that. An attempt to wash Sylvia, a laughing John Jr. sprayed her with a garden hose brought to the house that afternoon by Randy, and Sylvia again desperately attempt to exit the basement. So she's trying to escape, but before she collapsed, before she could reach the stairs in response to this effort, Gertrude stamped up upon Sylvia's head before standing and staring at several moments. Shortly at 5:30 p.m., Richard Hobbs returned to the man's whiskey home, and immediately proceeded to the basement. He slipped onto the wet basement stairs and fell heavily to the floor. The sight of Stephanie crying and Sylvia incapacitated and lacerated body after she had been ordered by her mother to clean Sylvia. Sylvia and Richard then decided to give Likens a warm, soapy bath and dress her in new clothes. Do you think that they thought that was going to help her at this point? I mean, okay. So they cleaned her up, put her in new clothes, and they laid her upon a mattress in one of the bedrooms as Sylvia muttered her final words, her final wish that Daddy was here and Stephanie would take her home. Stephanie turned to her younger sister, Shirley. "Oh, she'll be all right." It is a creepy story. Melanie pointed it out. Melanie told me about it and sent me all the info on it. It's horrible. It's a horrible story. Okay. And then Stephanie realized that Sylvia Likens was not breathing. She attempted to apply mouth to mouth, and as Gertrude repeatedly shouted to the children in the house that Sylvia was faking her death. Sylvia was only 16 when she died of all her injuries. And Gertrude initially beat Sylvia's corpse with a book, shouting, "Faker, faker," in order to arouse her, after she soon panicked and instructed Richard Hobbs to call the police from a nearby payphone. So they beat her after she died? That is horrible. These people are just horrible. Okay, so Gertrude led the officers to Sylvia's incapacitated and intensely bludgeoned and mutilated body laid on the mattress in the bedroom before handing them the letter that she forced Sylvia to write. You know, she also claimed that she had been doctoring the child for more than an hour of her death, you know, to make it sound like that they were trying to save her. And then she added that Sylvia ran away earlier from home with several teenage boys that afternoon, and bare-breasted and clutching the note. And Paula was clutching the Bible, having stated in the household that Sylvia's Likens death was meant to happen, and glanced in Jenny's direction and calmly said, "If you want to live with us, Jenny, we'll treat you like our own sister." No joke. Okay, so Gertrude told Jenny not to say anything, but Jenny, you know, she told the cops. She kind of casually whispered to the cops, "If you want to know, if you want to know, get me out of here. I'll tell you everything." So the cops get her out of there, and she tells them everything. The formal statement, she makes a formal statement to the cops, and then their officers arrest Gertrude, Paula, Stephanie, and John Jr. suspicion of Sylvia's murder within hours of her discovering her body. And that same day, Coy Hubbard and Richard Hobbs was also arrested for the same offenses. And the three eldest Vanswickski children, plus Coy, were placed in custody of the juvenile detention center, and the younger Vanswick children, Richard Hobbs, detained at the Minneapolis Children Guardian Home, where they were held without bail, pending trial. Okay, so Gertrude denied involvement in Likens' death, although by the October 27th, she confessed to having known the kids were abusing her, particularly her daughter Paula and Coy had physically and emotionally abused the Likens. Paula did most of the damage, she said, and Coy Hubbard did a lot of the beating, but Gertrude further admitted to having forced the girl to sleep in the basement because she wet the bed. But she did not have anything to do with it because of her mental distress and injury to her kidneys. So she's innocent. For real. Like, she said that. Like, are you kidding me? So, lacking in no remorse, Paula signed a statement admitting to have repeatedly beat Sylvia about the backside with her mother's police belt, once breaking her wrist on Sylvia's jaw, inflicting other attacks brutally, including pushing her down the stairs to the basement 2 or 3 times, inflicting a black eye. John Jr. admitted to having spanked Sylvia on occasions and adding, most of the time, "I used my fist to abuse her. He admitted to having burned Sylvia with matches on several occasions, adding to his mother repeatedly burned the child with cigarettes. I just really hate this family. They are horrible. Horrible. Worst family ever. Okay. Okay, so the five neighborhood children who also participated in the abuse, they were Michael Monroe, Randy Leeper, Darlene McGuire, Judy Duke, and Anna. They also been arrested October 29th. And they were also charged with causing injury to a person and some released into custody of their parents, and were under subpoena to appear as a witness for trial. Okay, so the autopsy. She has suffered excess 150 separate wounds across her entire body, addition to extreme starvation at the time of her death. The wounds varied of location, natural severity, the stage of healing. Is everybody out doing okay after some of that? After hearing all of it? How are we doing? I know this is really... I know. I think I do deserve it. And we're not done. We still have like what happened to everybody and everything. So we still have a little more to go. Are we doing okay? Does everybody need a drink? Are we all hanging in okay? It's fun Friday night, right? Okay, so she had burns, several bruising, intensified muscle and nerve damage. Her vagina cavity was almost swollen shut, although the examination of there was no sexual abuse, but it was like damaged. So she was still a virgin. That was all still intact. So, however, all of Likens' fingernails were broken backwards. Most of the extreme layers of her skin upon the child's face, breast, neck, right knee, peeled, receded in death throes. Sylvia evidently bitten through her lip, particularly severing sections of them from her face, because you looked it up. I don't want to see the pictures. Don't show me the pictures. Like, just reading it makes me want to cry. I mean, it sounds horrible what they did to her. They said what she died of was a subdural hematoma due to receiving several blows to her right temple. Both the shock she had primarily suffered due to severe prolonged damage inflicted to her skin, and being also very starving, were also listed to tributes of her death. That's just so sad. So the trial on December 30th, 1965. You're going to send them to me? Okay. Okay. I'll look at them. Oh, I'm going to need a drink. Marion County grand jury returned to first-degree indictments against Gertrude Manswisky and two of the three oldest children, Paula John Manswisky Jr. Indicted were Richard Hobbs and Coy Hubbard. All were charged for having repeatedly struck, beaten, kicked, and otherwise inflicted and fatal injury of Sylvia Likens with premeditated malice. 3 weeks prior to against these 5 defendants, Stephanie Manswisky was released from custody upon giving evidence, and also she was waived full immunity as a witness for prosecution. And then on March 16th, 1966, psychiatrists were, called in to make sure that they were sane to stand trial. Yep, they were sane. They were fine to stand trial. So the trial of Gertrude and her children, Paula, John, and Richard Coy, began on April 18th, 1966. All were tried together before Judge Rabb. In Indianapolis, the city county building, the jury selected that began several days. Okay. And then Gertrude herself pled not guilty by reason of insanity. Okay, me and you can do a video of the murder of Bistan. I'll do that. One of the first witnesses to testify on behalf of the prosecution was the coroner, Charles Ellis, who testified on the 29th of the intense pain that Sylvia had suffered, stating that her fingernails were broken backwards, numerous deep cuts and punctures covered much of her body, and her lips were essentially in shreds due to having repeatedly been bitten and chewed upon them. Ellis also further stated that Sylvia had been in an acute state of shock for between 2 to 3 days prior to her death, and that Sylvia may have been too advanced state of shock to much resist any form of subject of treatment into her final hours. Although he emphasized aside from the extensive swelling inside around her genitals, Sylvia's body bore no evidence of direct sexual assault. On May 2nd and May 3rd, Jenny Likens testified against all 5 defendants, stating that each had repeatedly both physically and emotionally abused her sister, adding that Sylvia had done nothing to provoked the assaults, and there had been no truth in either rumors that she had been falsely accused of spreading slurs and had been made against Sylvia's character. And during her testimony, Jenny stated that they abused her sister to much lesser degree she herself had endured began approximately 2 weeks after they began living with Gertrude and in the house. And as the abuse escalated, Sylvia had occasionally been unable to produce tears due to the acute state of dehydration. Ginny burst into tears to recall how just days before Sylvia died that she said, "Ginny, I know you don't want me to die, but I'm going to die. I can tell it." I just can't imagine her sister, like, seeing her die and being there and her saying that, like, that just breaks my heart for her. Sections of Ginny's testimony were later was corroborated by Randy Lever, who stated that he had witnessed Sylvia crying, but she could not shed tears. And having witnessed Stephanie strike Sylvia real hard after the mother had ordered her to remove her clothes in his presence, and visibly smirked as he confessed to having himself beaten Sylvia anywhere between 10 to 40 separate instances. On May 10th, the Baptist minister named Roy Julian testified to have knowing the teenage girl being abused at the home, although he had failed to report the information to authorities. Had been informed, Gertrude had said that Sylvia had made advances to men for money, and he had believed the girl had been punished for soliciting. The same day, a 13-year-old Judy Duke also testified, admitting to have witnessed Sylvia once having salt rubbed all over her open wounds and upon her legs, and she screamed. Duke testified on occasion that she witnessed a 10-year-old Shirley rip open Sylvia's blouse, to which Richard Hobbs had made a casual remark, "Everybody have fun with Sylvia." The following day, Gertrude testified in her own defense. She denied responsibility for Sylvia's prolonged abuse and torment and ultimate death, claiming her children and other children in the neighborhood committed these acts within her home, which she described as being a madhouse. She also added that she had been preoccupied with her own health and depression, that her to control her children. In response to questioning and relating to whether she had physically abused Sylvia and Ginny, Gertrude claimed that although she had spanked them, Sylvia, on one occasion, she was emotionally unable to finish doing so, and had not hit the child on any other occasions. And she denied any knowledge of Sylvia having ever endured any beating, scolding, branding, or burning within her home. Oh, your dog's watching me? 2 days later, Richard Hobbs testified in his own defense, describing how Gertrude called Sylvia into the kitchen on the 23rd and stated to her, "You have branded my children, so now I'm branding you." So he's explained that he testified about the branding and how he finished it. And then Marie was called to the stand, and she described that she broke down and admitted that she had heated the needle to which Hobbs used to brand Sylvia, and that her mother had full knowledge of that. And Gertrude sat upon the chair and crocheted as she watched the neighborhood girl named Anna attack Sylvia. And Marie added, although all 5 defendants had repeatedly physically and mentally tormented Sylvia, and she had often witnessed her mother and sister committing these acts before her, and her mother forced Sylvia to live in the basement, where the abuse had further escalated and she had ultimately died. And witnesses, yeah, she's evil. She is an evil woman. And witnesses testifying on behalf of prosecution, Grace Sargent stated that she had sat close to Paula in a church bus, and she heard that her bragging and about breaking her wrist, beating her so hard, and said, "I tried to kill her." And she was very proud of that fact. And on May 16th, the court appointed Dr. Dwight, I'm not sure how to say his name, so was I okay. Anyway, was questioned by Leroy New as the exhaustive interview for assessment. He had concluded that with Gertrude and John stated that she had invasive, uncooperative, and testified Gertrude was sane and she was in full control of her actions. So she was not insane. So, they closed the arguments. Each lawyer still told their side and why. So, convictions. The trial of the 5 convictions lasted 17 days before the jury retired to consider the verdict on May 19th, 1966. Okay, I'm trying to read. I know. I didn't mean to laugh. I was just trying to read. It's a lot to read. What they did is, like, the branding, that is horrible. Okay, so the convictions. 8 hours, and then the panel of 8 men, 4 women found Gertrude guilty of first-degree murder and commending a sentence of life imprisonment. Paula was found guilty of second-degree murder. Don't leave. No, don't leave. I wasn't saying not to leave. Don't leave. I was just saying. I was trying to read. Don't leave. I liked what you said. I read it wrong. And that was my fault. So don't leave because I read something wrong and I took it the wrong way. I only read half of it and then I was reading. It's hard to read 2 different things and moving back and forth. So my apologies. Please don't leave. I'm really sorry, Matthew. Please don't leave. Okay, so then they were life imprisonment for her. Paula was second-degree murder, and then Hobbs, Hubbard, and John Jr. were found guilty of manslaughter. Upon hearing that, the judge pronounced the verdicts. Gertrude and her children burst into tears and attempted to console each other, and Hobbs and Hubbard remained impassive. On May 25th, Gertrude and Paula were formally sentenced to life imprisonment. The same day, Richard Hobbs and Coy Hubbard and John Jr. were received 2 to 21 years and served in Indiana Reformatory. And then they also had retrials. Paula opted to plead guilty to voluntary manslaughter, and she was sentenced to serve a term of between 2 and 20 years. Despite unsuccessfully having attempted to escape prison in 1971, she was released in 1972. Gertrude, however, again was convicted of first-degree murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison. So her things were not. She did not work for her. So parole. Gertrude had impending parole throughout. Jenny, Likens, and other immediate family, they protested it. They did not want her to get paroled. But she was a model prisoner. She had good conduct. She was in favor of getting parole. Everyone liked her. All the prisoners called her mom, and they were very fond of her. She had so prison was a good life for her. Not that weird, but anyway. So following her release from prison in 1985, Gertrude relocated to Iowa. So she did get out, and she never accepted full responsibility for Sylvia's prolonged torment and death, insisted that she was unable to recall any of her actions those months, prolonged to her her asthma and the medicine that she was taking. Gertrude Vanswick lived in Laurel, Iowa, and she died of lung cancer on June 16th, 1990, at the age of 61. And then Paula, following her parole in 1972, she changed her identity and she worked as a school counselor. What school would hire her? For 14 years in the Iowa School District has changed her name to Paula Pace and concealed the truth regarding her criminal history to the school district. When applying for the position, she was fired in 2012 when the school discovered her true identity. Paula reported lives in small towns in Iowa, and she's married and has 2 children. The baby daughter that she was pregnant with in 1966, she named after her mother, and she put up for adoption. Yeah, she changed. Yeah. And then a lot of them changed their names. Richard Hobbs and Coy Hobbs and John Jr., they served less than 2 years before they were granted parole on February 27th, 1968. Richard Hobbs died of lung cancer January 2nd, 1972, at the age of 21, 4 years after his release. And he's also known he had at least one nervous breakdown. Following his release in 1968 from Indiana Reformatory Corps, Hubbard remained in Indiana and never attempted to change his name. Throughout his adult life, Hubbard was repeatedly imprisoned for various criminal offenses and occasionally charged with another murder in 1977 of 2 young men. So he really didn't learn anything. And then shortly after January 2007, Hubbard was fired from his job and he died of a heart attack on June 23rd, the year of age. He was at age 56. And then John Jr., he became a minister, and he counseling sessions for children of divorced parents. And then he never really talks about his past a lot. But can you believe he became a pastor? Is that not totally messed up? He became a pastor. I find that so. Jenny, I think she married a man named Leonard Reese Wade, and they had 2 children. She was very traumatized from what happened to her and her sister, and when she has anxiety, of course, and she died of a heart attack on June 23rd, 2004, at the age of 54. And when she heard about, I think it said that when she heard about Gertrude's death, she said, "Some good news. Damn old Gertrude died. Ha ha, I'm happy about that." So I think that was good. Okay, what do you guys think of the horrible story of that? What do you guys think? Because that's pretty much everything. There was some information on Stephanie. She also became a school teacher. I probably skipped over it, but she was a school teacher in a small town. She changed her name. I can't remember what it was. I know. I think it's funny that she died of lung cancer. She kind of deserved it. She probably deserved a lot worse. That story was horrible. It's so heartbreaking. It's a really messed up story. I know. You think it would be like a movie or something? Not a true story? It's just horrible. Right? Right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming tonight. Thank you for enduring this horrible story. I hope you guys enjoyed it, or at least thought it was entertaining or something. I know it wasn't like a light, fluffy story or anything. It's horrible. Anyway, thank you. We'll see you guys next Friday for a slumber party. And thank you. And I'll see you guys next week. Have a good night. You can always give me a good story, Melanie, anytime. I will see you guys next week. Good night.